The bugs. Maybe too intense for younger children.
No power on earth can stop them.
I'm going to Allerton. My grandmother's very ill. She may be dying. It's been 13 years since I've been there.
Welcome to Allerton.
Now, who is this?
An old friend.
Bye now.
Don't hang up on me again, Miss Post.
You're very sick.
I am not sick.
Is that supposed to be my mother? Why did you do this?
You like it?
No, I don't. It's sick.
She's not to be trusted. She's just like...
Just like a mother, Claude?
I could see you undressing.
I've got to get out of here.
Make the sounds for me you make when you are making love.
Nick, he's been calling again. He threatened to.
Andy, I don't have time now. Your grandmother's worse.
But I'm scared, Nick.
Just lock the doors and go on to bed. He isn't going to go after you in person. They never did.
Bye now.
This is Hans Manship from House of Death, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues. This time we're on to, I think, episode 329. And so we're getting back in our time machine and going back to 1979 via 1974 with SF Brownrigg's Don't Open the Door, which is going to be an interesting one to talk about because it is a kind of a proto-slasher that was released during the golden age of the, or re-released actually during the golden age of the slashers in 1979 in an effort to kind of cash in on the success of Halloween. So that's going to be a fun one to talk about. And that was your pick, Erik, wasn't it? Because I think you found it on Hysteria Lives and you thought, I think when I look back at my review, I realised that I kind of posited later on that it may not have been from 1979 or 1980. But obviously now, through the powers of our amazing sort of detective work of finding all sorts of things, we now know that it's not a late 70s movie. But
by amazing research, do you mean Wikipedia page?
Well, I'm not naming any names, but I have actually pulled up some some press articles from 1974 at the premiere in Texas of the film under its original title. So,
don't hang up.
Don't hang up, indeed, and don't hang up if you're listening to this, or any of you, Erik, Joseph, or Nathan. Please don't hang up until we finished. But we are also recording on a new setup, partly because, as you may have heard, Skype is closing down. So if you hear any strange anomalies, then we're just kind of ironing out the kinks, as it were. So Skype has been pretty kind to us ever since we went to recording single track only. And long-time listeners of the show will probably remember the Skype apocalypses that we suffered, a kind of epic kind of sort of beatbox breakdown sort Bloody Moon stutter-thons that we had in the past. So
I think the Crinoline Head is the episode to listen to if you want to hear those. I mean,
is that the classic one?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so cool. Okay, well, anyway, how are you doing, Erik?
I'm doing good, and this it's really appropriate that this is a 1979 film made in 1974, because 1974 was the year I was born, and 1979 was the year I became really conscious of the fact that I'm brilliant.
Okay, so even as a toddler, which was mostly egocentric, you didn't rate yourself very much?
Well, no, I did, but it was sort of 79. I was like, wow, I really am truly astonishingly brilliant.
Okay, well, it's a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is pre-Toya, pre-Kajagoogoo, pre-Thompson Twins and all that crap you listen to.
Hey!
Yeah. What?
Can I tell the listeners about the brilliant joke I did earlier this morning? Justin said, "Are we going to use Signal to record today?" Signal, of course, being the app. And I said, "No, let's use Colgate."
And for people who don't know, that's referring to toothpaste.
Yeah, it's a toothpaste joke.
And then I commented, well, that would be good, because then at least you'd shut up.
But what about the other joke I did recently where, this is brilliant. I was reading a book on the making of The Shining, and there was a picture in it of the old lady in the bathtub in room 237 behind the scenes. And I sent a picture of it to Justin, and I said, "Are you ready for this, everyone?" I said, "Look, Justin, it's Susie."
It's it's the quality entertainment that people come back for, and I'm sure one day we can publish a coffee table book of our chats, and then as predictable as ever, I sent a picture of Zelda from Terrorhawks and said, "Oh, look, it's a picture of Toya."
Yeah, I didn't like that.
No, I didn't think you would, but. So, yes, this is kind of just a glimpse behind the curtain of all the in-depth and clever and witty banter we have, which is mostly Erik sending memes of people doing standing ovations
for
to
14 long years.
Yeah.
Yes, Erik always sends a gif of a standing ovation after he makes one of his inverted commas jokes. So, but there you go. So, thank you, Erik. This is your pick, so we'll see what you think of this coming up. But Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Just another day.
Well, another day, and also, of course, Nathan, not forgetting, we're also going to be today recording a Patreon episode, your pick, on the Polonia Brothers feeders from 1996, which I must admit, this is the first ever, is it how you pronounce it? Polonia? Polonia,
yeah.
Polonia. I like Bologna, kind of, but it's my first ever movie of theirs I've ever seen, although I know they were quite prolific back in the day. So, that's going to be an interesting one to cover. Let's put it that way. But yes, is it the epitome of a Nathan pick? I would dare to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Joseph, I can imagine you are full of the joys of spring, looking to discuss this Southern Gothic, come proto slasher, and 1996 zero budget sci-fi horror movie.
Well, I guess all that remains to be seen, but I'm a little miffed that I can barely afford coffee anymore, and that upsets me.
Well, that's why if you haven't joined our Patreon, then please do, and then Joseph can afford some coffee unless it gets even more expensive. So
I don't have any right now, so.
Oh, really? No coffee?
No, I mean, I do need to go buy some, but it's getting really expensive because, it's imported.
Yes, tough times. So, okay, well, hopefully, coffee's not even the kind of thing you can grow, is it? You can't sort of just grow a coffee tree in your back garden.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not a horticulturist by any means, but I don't really know. Well,
you could ask Erik. He's just a whore.
Oh, God.
Right. Well, okay. Anyway, on that bombshell, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching recently. So, Erik, if you've calmed down, anything you've seen?
I saw Heart Eyes, but I won't go into it because I think it's prime for picking for next February on the show. Just to say that I really liked it. I also saw Companion, which I know Joseph mentioned in the last show. I wasn't here for the last episode, which I really liked. Again, I was expecting an elevated horror movie, and I was really surprised to see it how sort of popcorn and mainstream it was. High concept movie with sort of sci-fi leanings, and I really enjoyed it. Thought it was great fun. I also saw a similar high concept movie, Afraid, which is the most recent AI movie done by Blumhouse. Now, this got awful reviews when it arrived in cinemas, and it does look like a film that suffered a lot of tampering or production issues, because if you take away the end credits, the film runs 74 minutes, which is pretty darn short for a multiplex type movie. Also, there's the setup of the plot is they get this kind of Alexa / AI assistant into their house, this family, it's kind of a prototype, and it starts taking over their lives in sort of demon seeds type ways. But what happens is halfway through, the father of the family, for no particular reason, suddenly starts taking things really seriously and breaks into the corporation's HQ to try and disable, the sort of mainframe of the AI. And you're thinking, what happened? That escalated really quickly, as if there's a huge chunk of the story missing, which sort of implies that there was sort of production problems with the film. But I thought it was perfectly fine, entertaining. It's not something I'd rush out to watch again, but I thought it was like miles better than Night Swim, which was the sort of disastrous and really, really boring Blumhouse film of the previous year. I was expecting something along those lines again, but this one was actually quite interesting, quite fun, and it rattled along fairly well. 75 minutes, you can't really complain. So so it's called Afraid, with the sort of the AI in the middle of the word afraid sort of highlighted, to hence the the AI element in it. I don't know if anyone else has seen that, have they?
Not seen it. It did play our local cinema here, but I under whatever Spanish title that would have been. But it didn't. I didn't. From what I saw, it didn't. I saw the reviews are terrible, so I didn't seek it out. I don't know. Joseph, Nathan, is any interest in that one?
I would watch it. I haven't seen it yet.
I've seen loads of other ones as well, because it's been like 6 or 7 weeks since I have done the main show. I can't really remember what any of them are off the top of my head. But definitely, Companion was a big thumbs up for me. I know Joseph has seen it. Have you seen it, Justin?
Yeah, I think we did discuss it, didn't we, Joseph?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, no, we did discuss it on that one, the last episode, I think.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned that it's best if people go in knowing nothing about the film, which is the best way to approach it. So I kind of knew what the premise was. Now, there was a second surprise sort of halfway through that I wasn't aware was coming, and I was like, oh, right. And it kind of made sense. I'm kind of kicking myself, actually, that I didn't see that second reveal happening. But, I still don't... It didn't really hamper my enjoyment of the film at all, to be honest. I think it probably would have been a huge wow moment if I hadn't known, but I heard the review on Kermode and Mayo's film review podcast when it was in the cinemas at the start of the year, and he was doing his best not to give any spoilers, but he compared it to 2 films of recent times that sort of gave away what the film's central idea was going to be. So unfortunately that kind of was spoiled for me, but I did really, really enjoy it.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you, Eric. If anything else comes to mind, let us know. But Joseph, how about you?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think I've seen anything. The only thing I know I've seen is I'm rewatching Psych with my wife. She's never seen it. Tons and tons and tons of slasher movie and horror movie references in all those episodes. So I'm enjoying that, but I just don't think I've seen any movies lately.
Okay, I'm not familiar with Psych. Is that what Psych as in psychological?
P-S-Y-C-H.
Okay.
It's basically about this. It's a goofy kind of lightweight comedy detective show, basically about this guy who's got very, very hyper perception, and he lies to the Santa Barbara Police Department that he's a psychic. And so they hire him as a consultant, and basically they just kind of go through solving cases of the week. It's that type of show, but it's very, very funny, and it's like in love with like horror films. Like they're always referencing horror films, and they've got a 3-part Hitchcock episode where they just basically reference everything from Psycho to Vertigo to all of his old movies, and they've got a summer camp slasher episode where they just reference The Burning and all those movies, and it's just a very fun show, and I'm enjoying rewatching it with my wife who's never seen it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'll give that a look. When was that out?
Well, it came out in 2006. It ran for 8 seasons. It's all, you're pretty much going to see, it's all samey throughout. It's like the formula never changes, but it's very funny and very lightweight. It's a lot of fun to watch on like a Sunday afternoon.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, thank you for the recommendation. So I'll check that out. And Nathan, how about you?
No, I don't think I've seen anything new lately this time around. So yeah, I've only watched what we're covering.
Okay, no worries.
I have remembered one other one I watched. Yeah. It's actually called The Watched. It's the debut feature by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. So he produces it, and it has his fingerprints all over it because it's one of those sort of, again, high concept ideas with silly kind of twists. And the basic outline of the plot is quite good. This girl, it's actually set and filmed in Ireland, which was one of the reasons I was watching it. It arrived on streaming on Now TV over here. It's Dakota Fanning plays this girl who goes into this woods, which is kind of like a Bermuda Triangle, and she can't find her way out, and she finds 3 other strangers who are holed up in this kind of futuristic cabin in the middle of the woods, and every night they have to kind of perform for these creatures that are in the woods. This is all, it's bonkers, really. The 4 of them have to put on kind of theatrical shows for these creatures who watch them through this 2-way mirror in the cabin. And it gets more and more ludicrous and ridiculous as it goes on. It's quite sluggish. It's not a great watch, and it drags on a bit, but I like the central ideas of it, and it tries to tie everything together to Irish folklore at the end. So it's not a brilliant movie at all, and it did get kind of bad reviews from what I read, but I thought parts of the plot ideas were interesting if the execution itself was kind of a bit meh. But because it's Irish, I sort of gave it a pass. So
cool,
it was called The Watchers apparently in the States, but it was called The Watched over here because I think that there might be a TV show or something called Watchers that they didn't want it getting confused with.
Wasn't there that old? It was there. There was a film called The Watchers, wasn't there, back in the day?
There's one by Dean Koontz with Corey Haim.
That's right. Yeah,
and then there's another one with Keanu Reeves where he's a serial killer. But there's like several Watchers, I think.
So, okay, well, that sounds... I've seen the posters and stuff around for that, but I haven't caught up with that. But if you...
Yeah, because it did get a cinema release, although to me it felt very straight to streaming.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Erik. I'll just rattle through a few that I've seen. I've reviewed a handful for Hysteria Lives, so I'll quickly mention. One was Terror and Black Lace, which is one I've always kind of been slightly intrigued by. It's a mid-80s Mexican... kind of slasher movie come telenovela, and like if you don't know what telenovela is, kind of if you've ever seen them, you'll know what they are. But they're kind of the Spanish or Mexican or South American rather kind of soap operas, which tend to have incredibly over the top acting, plot twists, and everything is really kind of just completely over the top. So this is kind of, for the first half of this, it starts as like a telenovela, and it's got this young, beautiful bride living in this penthouse with her kind of medallion-wearing sort of macho husband who won't let her go out or do anything apart from just look beautiful. And she really wants to buy some skimpy black lace negligee. But downstairs from her lives this sex maniac who's going around chopping off women's hair around Mexico City. And she has hair like this kind of Jan Brady. She's always kind of swinging behind her long, sort of beautiful hair. So it all, obviously, as you can imagine, it all goes horribly wrong. So the first half of the film is this kind of very over-the-top kind of soap opera-y, kind of her doing very kind of Erik style, kind of stamping her feet and pursing her lips. And
I was just thinking, I'd like to see a movie where people walk around swinging their hair like Jan Brady, and they're just a psycho chopping off all of their hair. I think that would be hilarious.
Well, this is the movie for you. And then it's kind of then obviously they clash at the end. Well, towards the end, and there's this fantastic kind of chase scene up and down this apartment building, up and down the lifts and on the rooftop, and she gets down to a lacy black negligee by taking off her shoes and her dress and throwing the police below to try and get their attention. So she spends the rest of the movie in this kind of very sort of skimpy black negligee. So for me, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's not a good movie. It's very campy and over the top and very mid-80s. It's got that feel. Everything is just pure mid-80s. Everything's gone neon. Everyone's got big hair. Everyone's overacting, and it's just kind of a lot of fun. If you're kind of into that kind of thing, if you want a kind of straight-ahead slasher movie, possibly not for you. But the film it reminded me of the most was the Brian Clemens I'm the Girl He Wants to Kill, which is the TV movie, which was the one with the woman being trapped in the office block, being chased up and down the elevator with the psycho. So they're playing kind of cat and mouse with the elevator up and down floors, which kind of reworked in Fred Walton's Trapped in the 80s. So that this has got that very much that kind of feel towards the end of it. So it's kind of it's a lot of fun. If it sounds interesting, then sort of check out on Hysteria Lives. I've done a review without too many spoilers. So is that
what was the year on that actually?
85.
85. Okay. Yeah, I'll check that out.
because it's prime cheese, kind of like that kind of thing. It's got that, because obviously those the films like Don't Panic and Grave Robbers and all those other films that came out of Mexico around that time. It's got less of a kind of slasher movie setup, really, because it is kind of back-ended with a slasher movie action. But it's that's kind of fun to want to check out. The other couple I quickly mentioned, and one of them, the second one, I think I'm sure Nathan and Joseph might be familiar with, but there's one called Bloody April Fools, which is from 2013 as a Spanish movie, which is a quasi remake of Slaughter High. It's kind of set on December the 28th, which is the Spanish version of April Fool's Day. So you have a killer who there's a kind of difference in so much that it's about a group of teenagers who basically get waylaid on their trip and end up in this abandoned hostel where 13 years earlier somebody had been scalded to death in the boiler room. And then the killer turns up and starts killing them through pranks. So kind of quite similar to kind of Marty and Slaughter High, although some slight differences. There's kind of the thing that really distinguishes it is actually got 12 directors. So each director filmed about 10 minutes, or even less than that, maybe 6 or 7 minutes of the movie, because it was actually a product of the kind of prestigious film school in Spain. So it was kind of end of year project, but everything is kind of with kind of quite high production values, but very much playing to that early 80s sort of feel. So so that's kind of an interesting one to sort of cover. And the last one I was to mention was the Backlot Murders.
Oh yeah,
because we mentioned Corey Haim, and he's in this he's wasted in it. Not if you remember. Well, I don't mean that way wasted, but he's wasted as in like he's.
He probably is actually.
He possibly is. He didn't make another movie after this for about 6 years. But the basic premise of this is a rock band who's just on the verge of the big time get a gig shooting a rock video on the backstage of Universal Studios. And they have to fire one of their bandmates because he's unhinged, basically. And then when they come to shoot it, someone in an Elvis mask starts going around killing the band members, the crew, and their kind of bosomy backing singers. And Corey Haim is one of the band members. So, but it's got Priscilla Barnes, who I think was in Three's Company, who is fantastic, and Charles Fleischer, who was in quite a lot of stuff, but he had a small role in the original Nightmare on Elm Street as this kind of gay director. So I had a lot of fun with it. It's kind of really, for me, it's far more entertaining as a slasher parody of Hollywood than Scream 3.
What, really?
Yeah. Why?
Oh,
I think Justin's making it sound really good. Is it really bad?
Well, I remember it being pretty terrible. Now, to be fair, I have not seen it since it came out, but I always remember it being kind of the do you want to know a secret ilk? But the way Justin's kind of explaining things, maybe I need to reevaluate it.
Joseph, it's nothing like Do You Want to Know a Secret?
Okay.
This one has got like crazy bloody kills. It's very silly and stupid and, in a good way. I mean, it knows it's silly and stupid. It's just them, like a bunch of idiot like crew members and actors getting chased down the back lot of this studio. And like, there's all kinds of crazy death scenes. There's even a death that I lifted a little bit when we did Night Before Easter, the saw blade being thrown.
Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of, it is, where it falls down is it doesn't have the suspense of Scream 3, really, apart from there's one great chase scene at the end where the kind of would-be final girl in a very tight top crop is kind of running away from the killer with a battle axe, and as she runs, her breasts are going up and down and side to side, which is basically the whole movie is just that kind of thing. It's all about these kind of big boobed girls, and it's so it's kind of Scream 3. It's where Scream. The Backlot Murders basically is a kind of slasher parody that goes back to the more exploitative roots of the slasher movie. So kind of topless scenes, some nudity, and silliness. Whereas Scream 3 was sometimes too clever for his. I don't think Scream 3 is a particularly good finale to that trilogy. Really, I think coming after Scream and Scream 2, and even by that point it became quite safe, and it was kind of like. but where it falls down is it doesn't have the suspense really of the Scream movies. But as Nathan said, it's just silly. It knows it's silly. It knows it's a B movie. It's got blinking corpses. People giving really bad line readings, which you hope are intentional, and the killer who is just so over the top and so fun and so just completely chews the scenery. So I I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I must be misremembering. I know I've seen it. Is Corey Haim, does he spend most of the movie like with a guitar?
Probably. Well, he's a guitarist, so
yeah.
But he doesn't do. He gets murdered in a golf buggy. He gets garroted in a golf buggy.
I must be misremembering this movie, so I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
It's kind of like with you and Clown at Midnight. We go back to those older movies like that. Some of them are turning out to be pretty well. They've held up well, so yeah, I'll check this out.
Well, it's it's very much on the. It's probably plays more to the comedy, and some of the jokes around the wannabe Scream kind of satire style things fall a bit flat, but it has such a peppy silliness to it and a kind of frothiness to it. It's kind of impossible not to enjoy. So I had fun with it. It's not it's not a classic, but it certainly is like a. It's one I've been meaning to kind of check out. And I'm sure I've heard you and Nathan, or maybe just Nathan, mention it in the past as being kind of like a terrible movie, or certainly possibly you, Joseph. But
I obviously I don't remember it, so
no. Okay, well, it'll be a fun one to cover on the show at some point, perhaps. So, okay, well, that's there's been a few other bits, but I won't bore you with those. So let's get straight into our feature presentation.
After 13 years away from home, she returned to a house of terror.
Would you come closer to the phone, Miss Post, so I can hear you breathe?
A shocking motion picture of suspense and horror. There was no place to hide from fear or death.
What do you want, Claude?
I know what you and Crawler did to Miss Harriet.
Her mind could take only so much fear.
Breathing heavier, Miss Post. Does that signify anything?
You will never leave your house unlocked again after you see Don't Open the Door. Rated PG.
A series of disturbing phone calls plagues Amanda Post on her return to her dying grandmother's house in Allerton, where 13 years has not softened the memory of her mother's brutal murder in the same house. Another horrifying murder follows. Voodoo and effigies. Tension and suspense mounts to a thrilling climax, a film not to be watched alone, not for the squeamish. Don't open the door, 'cause on the other side is something so terrifying. It's Justin in a G-string.
Oh, Erik, really?
That's what's said in the back of the video box.
Is it? Well,
yeah.
You're saying that in 1974 you're trying to picture me in a G-string. I think we may have problems here, Erik.
I'm looking at the back of the box here, and he's unfortunately correct, Justin.
See, told you.
I don't believe that for a minute.
It also says runtime 1 hour 50 minutes, which is incorrect. This is 1 hour 25. Also, it said in that blurb, voodoo and effigies. Maybe I tuned out, but is there any voodoo in the film?
I don't remember that, but I was about to say, thank God it's not an hour and 55 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, so why did I choose Don't Open the Door? Well, as Justin alluded to at the start of the episode, I was looking through his Golden Year reviews on Hysteria Lives from 1978 to 1984, and this one was in there. And I thought, a golden era slasher. I haven't seen this one yet, and maybe we can cover it on the podcast. So I chose it, then I did a little bit of digging, realised it was from 1974. I was still kind of upbeat about the film. I haven't seen an S.F. Brownrigg film before. Now, in the back of my head, I had him painted as kind of a Doris Wishman type filmmaker, but on the basis of this, he's not that at all. Which is possibly a shame, because I find this film a little bit dull, if I'm honest. I mean, I thought that the pre-credits sequence kind of said all I needed to know about the film and what type of film I was in for, and that is, we've covered 2 films recently. We've done commentaries for 2 Blu-rays recently. One was for Delusion and one was for Funeral Home, and this is kind of a film cut from the same cloth. It's kind of a girl who returns to her family home and finds oddball characters and occasional murders happening. And this is not a Friday the 13th movie. It's more of a kind of a moody piece. And I don't know if it was just I was in the wrong mood to watch a film of this type, but I just couldn't get into this film at all. I could have done with it being a bit more Doris Wishman, if I'm honest. I could have done with a bit more silliness, a bit more, wackiness to it, to sort of pep it up a bit. I did enjoy it has a really good title sequence featuring images of creepy dolls, one of which reminded me of kind of a Clive Barker creation. And then the first post-credit sequence does have a kind of a real slasher feel as a POV camera prowls the house at night time, and we witness the murder of Mandy's mother. The rest of the film, I don't know, it's kind of like a melodrama. It's definitely not a sort of a thriller minute movie like we would normally get with an 80s slasher. The film plot centers around Mandy's grandmother, who lies dying at her home, and Mandy wants to move her to a hospital, but the 3 men are refusing to do that because they want to inherit her house. I don't know, it just seems all very wishy-washy, the plot and the motives. We get this long, drawn-out exploration of the house where Mandy goes around, and it does include this kind of Suspiria-esque attic space, which has green and blue tints it is green and blue tints on the windows, and as the light floods in, it's like living inside Freddy's sweater, except without the hideous stench, I imagine, because I doubt Freddy's sweater has been near a washing machine in decades. But in terms of Freddy's attire, it would be the lesser of 2 evils to living inside his underpants, which I imagine are all yellow and skiddy, because they definitely wouldn't have been. But then, does Freddy need to go to the toilet because he's supernatural?
I mean, he in Dreamland, he can make anything happen.
This is true. So it's
Erik, I'm a little bit worried about what you've been daydreaming about, I must admit.
Yeah, I don't know where we are anymore.
But I was thinking about living inside Freddy's underpants. Do you not think about that sometimes?
That would be a no.
We see Nathan makes a good point there. I think he could click his fingers and his underpants would be clean. Now, Jason's underpants, on the other hand, I definitely don't want to live inside them. And if any of you guys make me live inside Jason Voorhees' underpants, then I'm going to say no. Justin, you can't make me do it, okay?
What if there's a chunky Kit Kat or something that looks like it down the back?
Or what if Bob Hoskins were in there?
Oh, that makes things difficult now.
Yeah, but Erik, he said something that looks like it. That could mean something totally different.
Like a poo-poo.
It was a trick question.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to Don't Open the Door. Now, I possibly would prefer to live inside Jason Voorhees' underpants than have to watch this film again, because, as I said, I really did find it kind of plodding. I mean, the film is well made and it's well acted, and it's certainly a much more polished film than I was expecting. As I said, I thought Brownrigg was going to be a kind of Doris Wishman character. I was expecting a film along the lines of A Night to Dismember, where instead I got something that's really quite accomplished. And the film plays like a whodunit at the start for the first half. You know, Mandy is getting these obscene phone calls which are straight out of Prom Night, these whispered sort of obscenities coming down the phone. But the fact is that there's so few characters in the film, there's only a certain it can only be one of maybe 3 people who are 4 people who can be doing the phone calls. But then, like, the killer is revealed in kind of a real throwaway manner, sort of halfway through, and the mystery isn't stretched out any further than that. And it's also, spoiler alert, the guy who is doing the killing is I can't remember his character's name, but he looks exactly like Steve Pemberton as Hare Lip in The League of Gentlemen, which I think you've pointed out in your review on Hysteria.
He looks exactly like that.
He looks exactly like him. And like, there's a scene of him in drag later where he murders one of the characters, and he still looks like Steve Pemberton in The League of Gentlemen, maybe as Pauline this time. And he's the most overtly creepy person in the character, so he might as well have in the film. So he might as well have a neon sign over his head saying, "I'm the killer, the obscene phone caller." But I just think his reveal is kind of just thrown away halfway through, and once the mystery is out of the way, I just found the film just got even more dull for me.
Didn't you like the reveal of him being the killer when he turns around, because the guy's looking around the museum, and there's the setup with the baby in the crib and the mother sat with her back to this person is looking around, and it's the killer, and it slowly turns around with the knife or the hammer.
Yeah, I mean that's good, and I did enjoy kind of the early stages where the whispering, threatening phone calls were coming in, and I was like, oh, this is really prom night. I'm kind of into this. But then the second half, I thought, and her boyfriend Nick, I thought he's not a good one, really. I mean, he totally gets what he deserves, to quote Nathan Johnson at the end of the film. He's a doctor, and he completely brushes off. Amanda keeps telling him that she's getting these obscene phone calls, and he acts as if she's making it up or if she's just delusional or something. And he tells her, "Oh, just go get some sleep. It'll be fine." So, like, when he gets pushed off the balcony at the end, it's like, haha, there you go. It's your own fault. I can see why there's enthusiasm for this movie because, as I said, it's well made, and that I'm just not crazy on these kind of slow burn gothic, Southern Gothic kind of things. Delusion and Funeral Home are better films in my opinion, but they still wouldn't be ones that would necessarily float my boat. I mean, I think I'm probably the only one who's going to not like this film on this podcast, but maybe we'll wait and see. So Nathan, what did you think of Don't Open the Door, aka Don't Hang Up?
Well, I do want to keep it on a positive note here, but I have to admit that out of all the SF Brownrigg films I've seen, this one actually is my least favorite. I do find it to be probably the slowest of his films. You have something like Don't Look in the Basement, which to me can be slow paced, but there's this weird atmosphere going on throughout. And I enjoy that. And then my favorite is Poor White Trash 2, which I will pick at some point for the podcast, because it to me is the most entertaining of all of Brownrigg's work. But back to Don't Open the Door, I do appreciate, a lot of the scenes, kind of like you were mentioning, Eric. I did like the scenes with, the colors where it's like, reds and greens and all that, coming through the windows.
Which is like Freddy's jumper, which we established wouldn't smell because he has magic powers.
Yes. I mean, magic powers can be the answer to everything. I love, the creepy phone calls and, the location. And I mean, there's a lot going for this movie. The problem is, and this is probably the same issue I had with Delusion, is that it's just very slow paced. And to me, I don't know that there's enough mystery there to justify an hour and a half runtime. Maybe it could have stood to do with a few more murders. Just something to kind of pep up the pace a bit. But that's not to say I didn't like the movie. I still really enjoy it, even, with its flaws. I mean, I have to remember it is 1974. It's not necessarily a slasher movie, from the 80s. So, you shouldn't go in expecting anything like that. Although the artwork does have a killer with a giant machete, which, might be a little misleading. It's definitely more of a mystery. I'd say like a murder mystery. It's definitely not one that I'd probably rewatch, just due to, the slowness of it. Like I've always said, my biggest thing about movies is I just want to be very entertained. But that's not to say it's a bad movie. I would probably rank it maybe 6 out of 10, because I think it's slightly above average, but I don't know. It's just kind of slow for me.
I would give it maybe a 5 out of 10. I mean, I didn't hate it. I just found it a bit dull, but it wouldn't put me off watching other SF Brownrigg films, because I had read on the internet that this is probably maybe his least favorite of his movies. Joseph, what do you think?
Dull with a capital goddamn D, dull. 85 minutes, my ass. It felt like 185 minutes, Eric.
Yay.
This movie is like, it shows its hand on every plot twist way too early and often. Like all the big reveals, they reveal way too early, like Claude being behind the phone calls. And so we have to spend like almost an hour looking at Claude's teeth while he's talking on the phone. Or you just watch people slowly walking up the stairs. And, you know, I hate to admit this, but I do this sometimes if a movie's really testing my patience. I'll bump up the speed if I'm watching it on YouTube. And I bumped this one up to 1.5x, if I'm honest. And it was still moving very slow for me.
That's a good tip from future for Nathan picks in particular.
We're covering a Nathan movie next, and I'm not going to play my hand yet, but I did that for this movie, and it still felt very slow. Now I think it's very handsomely photographed, and I thought Susan Bracken as Amanda, I thought she was really, a very good performance. I liked her character, but I just felt like the whole movie was basically just them tormenting her in this selfish relative plot about this house that who really gives a crap about. Just let them have it. I don't really care enough to like stick around for this house. The house wasn't really that special to begin with. And they just kind of torment her. And like, there's that scene where she's forced to masturbate over the phone or attempt to masturbate. And it just feels icky. And it goes on and on and on. And 85 minutes of this. And I wasn't a fan. Like I said, it looks good. It surprisingly looks good. I expected, like you, Eric, less. But I just wish I would have gotten more with the entertainment.
Well, I'm surprised that we're all in agreement on that, because Justin gave this a 3 out of 5 glowing review-ish on Hysteria Lives, but that was back in the day. But Justin, will you make the noises a woman makes when she listens to Toya?
What?
How rude.
Turn it off. That's the kind of the noises people would make. Well, actually, I will be the lone defender of this movie, because I think it is actually rather good, or certainly different. I think it has a kind of weird ambience, and I think it's not really like anything else. I mean, it's a lot like a lot of other things, but it has a kind of a uniqueness to it, which I think is peculiar to his movies. I think it's very much helped that Susan Bracken, who's kind of looks like a young Carol Baker, is actually really good in the role, and she's very beautiful as well, and that works really well. I kind of like that there's certain scenes in it which are kind of, there's just a sense of weirdness, there's like almost like a dream-like kind of nightmarish feel to it. And I agree it's a slow burner, but I think it was definitely kind of more of an exercise in Southern Gothic via kind of a psycho style murder. I mean, that's certainly with the cross-dressing of the killer for no reason really, is there? There wasn't never really positive there was any reason for it. It is obviously very reminiscent of Norman Bates in Psycho. And so that was only 14 years after Psycho came out. So given that we're still getting films coming out today that are riffing off kind of Scream, it's not a massive surprise that there were still kind of psycho shockers like this. It kind of reminded me of another one like Blood and Lace. There's an awful lot of those kind of films that came out in the 70s that had this kind of feel, although this wasn't particularly gory by any stretch. I mean, it had a bit of blood in it, but it was mostly of the blood, the red blood sort of type. But I appreciate the characters kind of weird and sweaty and sort of uncomfortable, and it was almost like a play that they were all in. It all took place in this kind of big kind of Gothic house in the South in Texas, and you had these kind of good old boy characters who may be good or may be bad, and most of them turn out to be bad. And then you have this kind of that very strange, the killer being this kind of reminded me. I actually read back the review and I saw it said it looks like hair flips, so it's still kind of obviously reminding me of that. So I appreciate it. I mean, I found it more of a mood piece necessarily, but I can understand if you were watching and think you were expecting something that was more of a kind of a slasher movie, you might be disappointed. However, I mean, given that this came out in 1974 and it was probably made in early 74 or 73, there are kind of things in here which are kind of very kind of forward thinking, or certainly things that would appear later on in the slasher movie in the early 80s. And Erik mentioned the creepy phone calls, which are very prom night. They're kind of whispering down the line. Obviously, this came. I mean, I presume this was made before Black Christmas. There had been another movie, the one with Michael Douglas, called, I think it was When Michael Calls, from 1972, which had the creepy phone calls. And obviously, there'd been all sorts of kind of I Saw What You Did with William Castle, the Joan Crawford movie with the girls making prank calls and things like that. So there's obviously the phone's been, being utilised, like Dial M for Murder and things like that. But this kind of seemed to be one of the first movies in the kind of Psycho Shocker mould that kind of used that as a kind of terrorising thing, which is very much picked up in Prom Night. I mean, it also had the whole 13 Years Later thing, which became a sort of kind of something you would see a lot in the kind of slash movies. And especially had the POV shots. The murder of the mother at the beginning of the movie was kind of slightly reminiscent, again, like in the opening murder of Blood and Lace, of the opening of Halloween, with the POV of the shot of the outside of the house moving towards it. And not as explicitly similar as Blood and Lace, but certainly the murder of the mother, it kind of had some kind of similarities. So, this movie, whether or not it was hugely inspirational, because I'm sure when we get into background, just very briefly, it was released regionally. It was a regional movie for Texas in 1974, before getting a kind of rollout nationally 5 years later. I still like it. I mean, it's a mood piece. It's not a movie I put on for friends. But I do think it's it's very similar to a lot of things. It's obviously influenced by those kind of Southern Gothic movies like Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte, and all those kind of movies. But it has a kind of certainly a kind of a personality all of its own, and obviously I'm sure that's down to SF Brownrigg. So I think I have seen Don't Go in the Basement before, but I'm very curious to watch Poor White Trash, especially if it's going to be less ponderous, perhaps.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Poor White Trash 2. What's the AKA on that, Nathan? I can't remember.
Scum of the Earth.
That's it, yeah.
Which is another film about Susie.
Oh, for goodness sake. But the last thing I'll say before we move on to some background is that also, if you forget, in the 70s, and this was a PG-rated movie, so you have these scenes where you have, suggested kind of child molestation at the beginning of the movie, and then you have the killer instructing the woman to masturbate while he's got his hands under the dress of a doll. And you're just thinking, this isn't Disney. This isn't a Disney movie. It's not a kind of PG movie like we would know today. So it is kind of, it has a kind of weird 70s stuff that you just probably wouldn't see apart from in a 70s movie. So rightly or wrongly, that's kind of, at least it's different. I enjoyed it as a mood piece. So if you go into it like that, then I think there's a lot to enjoy there.
If you say so.
I do.
I still thought it was a bit of a dreary film, unfortunately. Anyway, will we go into background, or do we have any more to say on Don't Open the Door?
I like I think the Don't Hang Up title fits better.
It does, personally. Completely, because the telephone is such an important
It's
part
also led to some miscommunication. I thought we were going to cover Don't Look in the Basement because for some reason you were like the SF Brownrigg film from 1972 or 74. So I got it in my head that it was that one, because I remember Don't Hang Up as Don't Open the Door from the 80s. So that was the miscommunication.
Yeah, is Don't Look in the Basement a slasher film?
Basically, the way we look at slasher films and what we've covered before, yeah, we could fit it in.
Okay, will we go into background then? Nathan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nathan, do you have any background for us?
It had the working title Seasons of Murder. So there's another title for it.
It was apparently released as that in the late 70s in some places as well.
The film was shot on location in Jefferson, Texas in the late summer of 1973. The historic House of the Seasons in Jefferson served as the primary filming location. And that's what I have.
Well done, Nathan.
Thank you.
Joseph, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, I know it was released to VHS via Video Gems in '85. I think it was a big box. Was that right, Nathan?
Yes, it was the one with the big machete coming out from behind the door.
Did you guys get the same artwork over in the UK?
I think so. Let me have a look. Was this didn't get caught up in Video Nasty scandal, did it?
Don't think so. No.
Yeah, well, see, I don't think it ever. I mean, it might have, but I never saw a release under "Don't Hang Up" anywhere. To my memory, I don't know if it did. I'm sure it may have, but I don't know if it did in the UK or not either. But yeah, that's all I have.
I know the video release over here was a door opening and a sort of a shadowy figure. And it says, after 13 years, she returned home to a house of terror. There was no place to hide from fear or death.
Okay.
Yeah, so looks like a different sleeve completely. Justin, do you have any background for us? You do.
Yeah, I've got a few bits, but I won't take everything because I'll just kind of mention that I found a review of, well, not even a review, it's kind of a press article from the Longview News Journal from Friday 26th of April 1974. And they were talking about the premiere happening in Longview. And it was under the title "Don't Hang Up," which I've also found there's like a press listing of it with the tagline, "An unknown caller whose whispers stirred her and terrified her, warning her, don't hang up," with a picture of Susan Bracken holding the phone, looking shocked as if she just heard a toy song. But just a couple of things. They talked about they were going to do a premiere in Longview, and Susan Bracken was in town to promote the movie, as was the producer, Martin Duro, who, not bizarrely, but his other credits were Breakfast at Tiffany's and the Pink Panther movie with Peter Sellers.
And Terms of Endearment.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a strange. I'm not quite sure where. I think he was doing another movie with SF Brownrigg after this. So because again, my understanding is this movie was, and there's been a lot of regional horror movies, and some of the info I've got from this has come from books on regional horror movies, that quite often they would just be released to a regional audience because that's where they may have thought that it would play best to. This movie didn't get released outside of Texas, as far as I know, until it got re-released in 1979 as Don't Open the Door, which I think was kind of very opportunistic to essentially kind of hoodwink people into thinking it was a slasher movie in the mold of Halloween. Certainly the artwork sort of did that as well. And again, I'm sure people who saw it were probably very felt misled. And it certainly wouldn't be the first proto-slasher that was kind of re-released and repackaged to look like it was a slasher movie. Like another one, for instance, would be Rituals from 1977, which was re-released as The Creeper with silhouette artwork with teens hanging upside down and someone with a meat cleaver, which completely misrepresented the film, even though that's arguably a much better movie. But sorry, Joseph,
can I ask you? Can I ask you? When was its first wide release? Because I see like 74, 75, 79, 80, and even 85 for releases of this film.
I mean, I think it was picked up by the Capitol Films Corporation, and who re-released it in 1979. So I think that was its biggest release. Because I looked into to see if I could find any reviews of it, and there was like, even though there were lots of very minuscule press ads for it with really kind of small ones. So it was definitely not. It was seen as not a prestige movie. And it didn't seem to be screened for critics. It seemed to be something that was just thrown into theatres and drive-ins in 1979 to kind of make a quick buck, and it probably had, however many prints, 20, 30, 100 prints that would roll out across the country through 1979 and 1980, like a travelling roadshow almost. So, but I say I wouldn't be surprised if it came out, got re-released in 1985, because I know the Demon, the South African movie, was released in 1985 as Midnight Caller, I think, and that was that was made in 79, I think. So these films would have looked positively antiquated by that point they were released. But so a film made in 74 being released in 75 would have just looked. I mean, back then fashions changed so much quicker than today, arguably. But there's a few more bits and pieces. But Eric, I don't want to take everything away from you, because I know you suffer enough with your Toya fandom and stuff.
Hey, well, when I picked, one of the reasons I picked Don't Open the Door as well is because I just jumped to the conclusion that there would be a chapter on SF Brownrigg in Stephen Thrower's brilliant book Nightmare USA. I thought, okay, that'll sort all the background for me, just to flick through that book and it'll be done. Unfortunately, there is no chapter on SF Brownrigg in that book. I really should have put more research in before I picked this film. So I had to go searching for information on this. I could find very little, but what I will tell you is that you mentioned the producer Martin Juro. Now, apparently, IMDb claims that he's a cousin of the actor Chris Pine. Yes, the young actor Chris Pine. Martin Juro was born in 1911. Chris Pine was born in 1980. Can they be cousins?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I would have to think about this.
Yes, unless they're like second, third, fourth cousins, twice removed type thing or something.
Possibly, yeah.
Now, Nathan, you'll like this tidbit, but again, I'm not 100% sure IMDb are correct on this, but the score is done by a guy called Bob Farrer, who apparently also scored one of your favourite movies, Terror at 10 Killer. Yes, but take that with a pinch of salt, because it gives his birth year as 1960, which meant he would have been 13 years old when he did the score for Don't Open the Door. And he would have been 12 when he was doing the score for Don't Look in the Basement. So I'm not sure they've got all their facts correct.
No, I think he was 12 when he did the score for Terror at 10 Killer.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, yeah. The cat running up and down the keyboard. Gene Ross, who plays Judge in the film, he was one of the vigilante group in Halloween 4. He played the character of Earl. He was also a cop at the start of Friday the 13th, the final chapter. So he's got a slasher pedigree. And he also had the very pivotal and memorable role of Man in Shower in The Goonies. I don't remember a man being in a shower in The Goonies, although I do like Men in Showers. Annabelle Wienick, who plays Annie, I think she's the one who makes the phone call at the start of the film. She was also in Deadly Blessing. So that's all the horror pedigree. Let's see. Oh, the SF in SF Brownrigg stands for Sherald Fergus, which makes it sound like he might have Scottish heritage, maybe even Irish heritage, but he's from Arkansas, and then was based in Texas after that.
His initials are SFB. So fucking boring.
Oh, well spotted,
Joseph.
No, that's not a knock against him. He's made some good movies, but
why is Arkansas pronounced Arkansas when it's spelt Arkansas?
I don't know. It's America. It's the United States. Who knows?
Interesting. SF Brownrigg seems to have quite a small filmography. He's did Don't Look in the Basement, Poor White Trash Part 2, Don't Open the Door, Keep My Grave Open, and then another film in 1986 called Thinking Big, and that seems to be it. That be right?
Yeah, but the movies he did make were memorable.
Well, yeah, I'll wait till I've seen the others before I make a judgment. I'll wait until I've seen his Susie movie, Justin.
No, I think you will like Poor White Trash too. That one really is good.
Awesome. Justin, what else do you have for us?
Well, just a couple of other bits. It was just I was surprised that Susan Bracken didn't do anything else after this, because it seemed like she was very committed to promoting the movie. And then she just seemed to fall off the face of the earth. I mean, I don't know what happened to her, but she was better than perhaps the material warranted. So I was surprised she disappeared. She was a daughter of, I'm not familiar with him, but he was a comedian and film star. I think it's Eddie Bracken.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you know who that is? Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know who he is, yeah.
Yeah. But, and she was discovered by the producer he saw her in Dinner Theatre. But, she kind of disappeared. But there's a book which I recommend, which I don't know if you've got an interest in regional horror movies, is Regional Horror Films 1958 to 1990 by Brian Albright, which was released some years back now, but I think it's still available. In that he doesn't, it mentions F. Brown Rigg, who was, I think, something of an enigma. But there's an interview with someone called Larry Stufer, who directed a film which I haven't seen, but I'm aware of, also from 1974, called Horror High, which is, I think, is another Texas regional horror movie. And he says, there's an interview with him, and he says, although you wouldn't see him on the credits, he actually helped out on Don't Open the Door, and he talks about how S.F. Brown Rigg was a huge innovator and would do things on a tiny budget, but make things look more expensive than they were, including sort of coming up with ingenious ideas to do dolly tracking shots and various things like that without the equipment. So that's definitely worth sort of checking out. So yeah, he's a bit of a say a lot of these people you think, again, I would have thought he would have been in the Stephen Frower book as well. So, you know, I'm sure there's some interesting stories out there on him. But yeah, so that's all I've got, I think, for Don't Open the Door.
Oh, the only other thing, I found an article on S.F. Brown Rigg in an old Fangoria from 1989, and the only thing really of that we haven't covered about this film is that apparently one of the rooms in the house they were filming was haunted, although S.F. Brown Rigg himself didn't encounter any ghostly experiences, but he said that 4 of his crew would refuse to go in there, so they decided not to use that room in the film.
Because I think it was a famous, because it also Larry Stufer sort of says that part of the world was very kind of, he said it was kind of felt haunted and also kind of very eerie down near the swamps and things like that. So it definitely has that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I think you should be scared of the alligators more than ghosts.
Possibly, yes. And just to put things in context, it does say on a thing on S.F. Brown Rigg, I saw that from the review of the Michigan Daily called Poor White Trash 2, the worst movie of all time.
Harsh, so, it's not that, but it's just found it a bit boring, personally. But
well, no, this is the Poor White Trash Part 2, isn't the one we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
Well, I know, but they always, mainstream critics don't know their ass from their elbow, do they, when it comes to these things? So yes.
They sometimes even say bad things about Toya, and that's just ridiculous.
I'm surprised they say anything at all, but there you go. Right, so what was the consensus on the group? Did we get anything on this one?
A paltry 4 comments, so I'm going to read them all. A very underappreciated film, creepy as fuck, entertaining despite being quite obvious, until the end turns things around somewhat. That was from Ingo Dirk Schneider. There's a reason why this one disappeared into obscurity, lads. The trailer is far more entertaining. A very tedious film. That was from Glenn. Another low-budget drive-in horror flick from the creator of Don't Look in the Basement from 1972. This one offers a straightforward slasher experience. Does it? Its pacing is inconsistent, sometimes building tension only to lose momentum inexplicably. Nonetheless, it remains engaging, largely due to Bracken's compelling portrayal of the tormented protagonist. The film also features a notably grisly mallet murder scene and is alternately titled Don't Hang Up. That was from Sean Guerrero. And finally, this one says, I love the atmosphere of dread that runs through the old house and the decaying Southern Gothic setting. Whilst it's a little light on gore, it more than compensates with psychological unease and creeping tension. Thumbs up from Alex Jerry. Follow us on Blue Sky at THC-podcast. Listen on Patreon and YouTube to help support the show, or listen wherever you catch your pods if you just want to listen. Write to the show via the Hysteria Continues at gmail.com with feedback and general questions. If all that sounds like too much to remember, just search our name. You'll find us. Justin?
Yeah, well, to say thank you guys for writing in. It's always good to hear your comments, so keep sending them in. So, we also, because we've got a little bit of feedback coming on along, but I think everyone's been on tenterhooks, haven't they?
Yes.
For I don't know, the end of the show. No, Erik, I think you have a joke of the week, and I haven't got my soundboard up, so.
Wow.
What the fuck was that?
It was a half-hearted attempt at the joke of the week jingle.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. What does a prisoner use to make obscene phone calls? A cell phone. A cell phone.
I think I like Justin's better.
It was funnier. It was certainly funnier, yeah.
My joke was good. It was well thought
Justin
out.
stole your thunder.
He totally stole my thunder.
He did.
So stupid. Everything's just stupid.
Well, at least it makes sense, Erik. It was one of your least less esoteric jokes, I think.
Yeah, it actually made sense. Oh my God.
Hey.
So we also have some feedback, don't we? So who would like to go first?
I will. Okay, so this one is from Simon Kingsley Holmes. Hi guys, another striking episode on the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and so great to hear you all give such interesting and thoughtful views on something out of your wheelhouse. I agree that it's a film that's more fun to talk about than to watch, but that's nobody's fault. The film is over 100 years old, like Justin. And
he doesn't say that. I can see it in front of me, you bastard.
No, it does. On my copy it does.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah. The film's over 100 years old and coming from a time when cinema was still figuring out what it even was. Both filmmaking and acting were still very bound to the theatre, and silent cinema is hard to come around to for most people. It took me years to finally embrace it, and still I only have seen a handful. I first saw Caligari at a local drive-in in Dunedin. Is it? Dunedin? I'm not sure how to pronounce that town name. I don't know where this is. Where is Simon from? I first saw Caligari at a local theatre in Dunedin. Justin, help me out. Is that a UK town name?
I think he's from Scotland, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
I could be wrong.
It does look Scottish, so apologies, Simon, for not being able to pronounce that name. It's not one I've come across before. No jokes, Justin. With live accompaniment by a local punk band who were improvising a soundtrack, which was pretty cool. That sounds awesome, actually. A punk band doing an improv score to a silent movie. I think Caligari is easier to watch than Nosferatu, personally, which perhaps is to do with being a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and that film's consciously difficult and unpleasant aesthetic. If it helps contextualize Dr. Caligari's political background, I've recently been reading an excellent book called Vertigo about Weimar Germany and around that time in the aftermath of World War I Germany, which was a very young country at the time too, and was in turmoil with a government that had been formed on a whim and factions from all across the political spectrum vying for supremacy in the streets. Fascist groups were preying on young men's anger and resentment about the war, and everybody was also feeling very disenfranchised after the collapse of the empire and the fall of the Kaiser. So Caligari is in one sense about shell-shocked PTSD suffering troops, but also the psychological experience of being German at the time. As you all said, the film is open to interpretation, and I'm trying to stamp one meaning on it, but I thought it was worth pointing out some contemporaneous points since I now happen to know them. Also, buy that book, Vertigo, by Harold Jahner. It's really, really good. Sorry for the long email, but still love you all. Thanks for everything, Simon Kingsley Holmes. And sorry, Simon, you used lots of big words there and I was stumbling a bit. You sound very, very smart.
Well, I would also say it's Dunedin's in New Zealand, and I'm personally embarrassed that Erik didn't know that, so I must apologise.
Justin, and you and your Googling ways.
I didn't know it either, so...
Dunedin.
Well, I was thinking about how many
it's pronounced Dunedin, of course, according to Wikipedia.
Okay, but how many drive-ins do you reckon they would have in Scotland, Erik?
This is true. I didn't really think about that. I didn't think it through. Drive-ins aren't really practical in countries like ours because the weather is so pants.
I don't know if there are. There was never a history of drive-ins in the UK, just because. No, there may have been a one or two, but not really. But no, that was fascinating email, Simon, so thank you for that. So I have one here. This one's from Trevor, and he says, "Hey guys, first time writer, inner, but I wanted to send a list of golden age slashers you've yet to cover that I really want to hear you talk about." So he's given a list here, so see if there's any of these that jump out at you. It's Bloodstalkers, which is again another kind of proto slasher, I think. Disconnected, Double Exposure, Driller Killer, Ghost Keeper, Good Night, God Bless, which also, aka Good Night, God Awful, if I remember correctly. Horror House on Highway 5, Hotline, The Love Butcher, Silent Scream, which of course we have just covered with Amanda Reyes. Terror from the late 70s one.
Norman J. Warren.
Norman J. Warren.
Have we, is that slasher?
Yeah,
well,
it's slasher enough.
It's kind of supernatural slasher in the same way as Superstition is.
Yeah.
There's lots of kind of gore deaths, kind of flying swords and things like that in it. So I reckon there's enough in there for us to cover. The Toolbox Murders, the Town That Dreaded Sundown, and Without Warning, which is the slasher via flying pizzas, alien pizzas, if I remember.
Now, he says about the Town That Dreaded Sundown, how could you cover the remake and not this? So we have done the remake, I'm assuming, yes.
Yeah.
I think we did.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, all worthy suggestions, which I suspect we've already covered Silent Scream, so I wouldn't be surprised some of those turn up quite soon. But he also goes on to say, and probably a few others I've forgotten. I'm especially interested in hearing your thoughts on Without Warning, since Erik loves sci-fi stuff.
Yes, I do like that movie.
And Trevor, if you like sci-fi stuff, then we are covering, as I mentioned, the Polonia Brothers Feeders, which I think AKA is, what was it? Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think is.
Don't listen to them. That film was made by Michael Bay, I thought, Feeders, no?
Yes, I mean, it's got the special effects for it.
Well, we'll be discussing that. So if you have a inkling for or not, an affection for sci-fi, then join us over on there soon. But it says your show has got me through a lot of dark times over the years, and I often daydream about meeting the four of you for dinner and drinks sometime to pick your brains. Keep slashing the airwaves, Trevor. So thank you so much, Trevor, for sending those in. A lot of good suggestions. We're going to keep a list of that because, we're not at a struggle because there's so many slasher movies for us to cover. But obviously, choosing one that is, going to be entertaining to talk about. I can
definitely agree with Without Warning, The Love Butcher, and Terror. Those are three that I would really love to cover soon.
Yeah, I mean, Without Warning is kind of it's definitely it's a kind of slasher movie via sci-fi, in so much that it's got a slasher movie kind of setup, isn't it?
And my God, it has one of the best posters of all time, Without Warning.
Excellent. So, okay. Well, is there anything else we need to discuss before we say what we're covering next time?
I guess just what we're covering next time.
Yeah, and it's your pick, Joseph.
Yes, and we will be discussing perhaps the most preposterous slasher film, and I put slasher film in quotations, probably the most preposterous slasher film I can think of. Listener Christy Valenti wants us to cover Mindhunters from 2004, directed by Rennie Harlan.
Which I've never seen.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that says that looks at the Saw films and says, "Hold my beer."
Excellent. Well, we should look forward to that. And I say we are kind of, preparing to take ourselves off to Uranus shortly with Feeders. So, yeah, check out the Patreon feed for that, because that's going to be a fun one to talk about, I'm sure, because it certainly is. It was an experience.
Memorable experience.
An experience. So, okay.
That reiteration, wow. It's like, it's an experience, Nathan.
What are we covering next? Oh no, we've already sorted out what we playing out with.
Okay, well, I sent two options because I was going for "Hanging on the Telephone" by Blondie, but I have a feeling we've used that before, have we, for an outro?
Well,
I don't remember.
You like recycling things, so it doesn't matter too
how
much.
rude! The other was "Green Door" by Shakin' Stevens, which I know is one of your favourite artists, Justin.
I can't stand that cunt. So,
oh my god! The C word, everyone.
Dang, Justin, that was brutal.
That was brutal. What did Shaky ever do to you?
Well, he's not a very nice person.
Yeah, but his songs are wicked.
Well, no, I think
they're
maybe.
mint.
Well, I think because it's Green Door.
I have a feeling that Eric's he's gonna pick that one just to
we're playing out with, we're playing out with Green Door by Shakin' Stevens.
Well, at least I never have to listen to it, so. Okay. So we had that in post. So, okay, well, anyway, that was, even if the movie was possibly not a pulse, what's the word? Pulse
racing.
Pounder. Yeah. It was a fun one to talk about, and so it was a fun one to listen to as well. So yeah, well, all I can say is we're playing out with whatever we're playing out with, and we'll catch you next time on Hysteria Continues. So thank you for listening, and say goodbye to good people.
Shakin' Stevens is not a cunt. Bye.
He is.
Bye.
Bye.